I used to believe that one day everything would finally make sense. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday I would feel ready. Someday I would feel confident. Someday I would know exactly what to do with my life. And until that day arrived, all I had to do was wait for more experience, wait for more knowledge, wait for more certainty, wait for the perfect opportunity. The strange thing is that most people never realize they're waiting. They call it planning, they call it preparation, they call it being realistic. But beneath all those respectable names is the same dangerous habit, waiting for a version of life that never comes, waiting for a feeling that never arrives, waiting for permission. I didn't understand that at the time. I thought I was being smart. I thought I was avoiding mistakes. I thought I was protecting myself from failure. But years passed, and nothing changed. Not because opportunities weren't appearing, because I wasn't moving. I was standing still. And standing still has a way of disguising itself as progress. You read another book, watch another video, create another plan, imagine another future, and each action feels productive. Yet somehow your life remains exactly where it was. The problem wasn't lack of effort, the problem was direction. I was preparing for a life I wasn't actually living, preparing for challenges I wasn't actually facing, preparing for opportunities that existed only in my imagination. Meanwhile, reality continued moving forward without me. Days became months, months became years, and one uncomfortable question started appearing more often. What exactly am I waiting for? At first, I ignored it. Then I avoided it. Eventually, I couldn't escape it because every answer sounded weak. I was waiting until I felt confident. But confidence comes from action. I was waiting until I felt ready. But readiness comes from experience. I was waiting until fear disappeared. But fear never disappears. Every excuse collapsed under its own weight. Every explanation sounded less convincing than before. And for the first time in my life, I faced a possibility I didn't want to accept. Maybe nobody was coming. Maybe there wasn't going to be a perfect moment. Maybe there wasn't going to be a sign. Maybe there wasn't going to be a rescue. That thought stayed with me, not because it inspired me, because it terrified me. We all grow up believing some version of the same story. Someone will help us. Someone will guide us. Someone will eventually appear and make everything easier. Maybe it's a mentor. Maybe it's success. Maybe it's love. Maybe it's luck. The details change. The belief remains. We spend years expecting something external to solve an internal problem. We expect life to arrive before we begin living. And that's why so many people stay stuck. They are waiting for permission from a world that never planned on giving it. I know because I was one of them. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't weak. I was simply trapped by an idea. The idea that someday I would become ready. But readiness is one of the biggest illusions ever created, because nobody feels ready. Not the successful people, not the confident people, not the people you admire. They simply move before they feel ready. They act while uncertainty still exists. They step forward while fear remains. And that's why they grow, while everyone else waits. The realization hit me harder than I expected, because it forced me to confront something uncomfortable. I had spent years blaming circumstances, blaming timing, blaming opportunity, blaming limitations. But deep down, I knew the truth. The biggest obstacle wasn't outside me, it was me. Not my lack of ability. My habit of waiting had become my identity. Every dream existed in the future. Every goal existed in the future. Every version of success existed in the future. Nothing existed today, and the future is a dangerous place to live, because it never arrives. When tomorrow comes, it becomes today. Then we move the goal again, and again, and again, until eventually an entire life disappears inside preparation. That's when I began noticing something strange. The people who changed their lives weren't necessarily smarter. They weren't necessarily more talented. They weren't necessarily more fortunate. They simply stopped waiting. That's it. They stopped negotiating with fear, stopped asking for guarantees, stopped demanding certainty, and started moving, even imperfectly, even slowly, even while doubting themselves. Movement changed everything, because action creates information. Action reveals possibilities, action builds confidence. Action creates momentum. Waiting creates none of those things. Waiting only creates more waiting. The moment I understood that, something shifted inside me. For years I had believed fear was the enemy. Now I realized inactivity was the enemy. Fear wasn't stopping me. My response to fear was. The most successful people I studied weren't fearless. They simply refused to let fear make decisions for them. That changed my perspective completely, because suddenly courage looked different. Courage wasn't confidence. Courage wasn't certainty. Courage wasn't the absence of doubt. Courage was movement, despite all three, and movement was something I could control. For the first time, responsibility felt empowering instead of heavy. If nobody was coming to save me, then nobody was stopping me either. If nobody was coming to change my life, then I had the freedom to change it myself. It was terrifying, but it was also liberating, because responsibility gives you something excuses never can: power. And once you recognize that power, you can never fully return to being a victim of your circumstances. You begin seeing opportunities where you once saw obstacles, possibilities where you once saw limitations, choices where you once saw problems. The world doesn't change. You do. And when you change, everything starts looking different. That's when I understood the first truth most people spend their lives avoiding. Nobody is coming, not because life is cruel, not because the world doesn't care, because your life was never supposed to belong to someone else. It was always yours, the responsibility, the decisions, the future, the entire thing. And whether that future becomes extraordinary or ordinary depends on one question: will you keep waiting, or will you finally begin? There is something dangerous about waiting. Not because it feels painful, because it feels comfortable. If waiting felt like suffering, most people would stop. If waiting felt like failure, most people would move. But waiting rarely feels that way. It feels reasonable. It feels safe. It feels responsible. That's why so many people spend years trapped inside it, without realizing what it's costing them. I know because I did. Every delay had a logical explanation. I needed more knowledge, more preparation, more experience, more certainty, and each excuse sounded intelligent. That's what made them dangerous. The most destructive lies are rarely obvious. They sound like wisdom. They sound like caution. They sound like common sense. Until one day, you look back and realize you've spent years standing in the same place. That's when I started noticing a pattern. The people who accomplished extraordinary things weren't operating with more certainty than everyone else. They were operating with less. They accepted uncertainty. They accepted risk. They accepted that they would make mistakes. Most importantly, they accepted that they would never have all the answers before they began. That realization changed everything, because I had spent years trying to eliminate uncertainty. Meanwhile, successful people were learning how to move through it. They understood something I didn't. Life doesn't reward certainty. Life rewards action. The world belongs to people who move, not people who wait. And suddenly, my old way of thinking started falling apart. I realized I had confused safety with progress. I thought avoiding mistakes was the same thing as moving forward. It wasn't. In reality, avoiding mistakes had become another way of avoiding growth. Because growth is messy. Growth is uncomfortable. Growth involves failure, embarrassment, rejection, confusion. There is no version of growth without those things. Yet I had spent years trying to find one, trying to discover a path where I could succeed without risk, advance without discomfort, win without struggle. That path doesn't exist. And the moment I accepted that, something inside me became lighter. I stopped treating uncertainty like an enemy. I started treating it like evidence, evidence that I was entering new territory, evidence that I was learning, evidence that I was growing. For years, uncertainty had been a warning sign. Now it became a compass. If something scared me, maybe it mattered. If something challenged me, maybe I needed it. If something felt uncomfortable, maybe it was exactly where growth was waiting. That idea transformed the way I looked at my life, because suddenly all the opportunities I had ignored became visible, not because they appeared overnight, because I finally stopped looking away. The truth is, opportunities rarely arrive looking like opportunity. They arrive looking like work, responsibility, risk, effort. That's why most people miss them. They're waiting for excitement. Life offers challenge. They're waiting for motivation. Life offers discipline. They're waiting for confidence. Life offers action. And action is where confidence is born, not before, after. I wish someone had told me that years earlier. Confidence is not the cause of action, it's the result. You don't become confident and then act. You act, and confidence slowly follows. One small step at a time, one victory at a time, one lesson at a time. That's how every strong person is built, not through certainty, through repetition. And suddenly I saw why so many people remain stuck. They're trying to feel ready before they begin. But readiness is created by beginning, not the other way around. The people who change their lives understand this. They don't wait for perfect conditions. They start with imperfect ones. They don't wait until fear disappears. They move while fear is present. They don't wait until they believe in themselves. They build belief through action. That realization forced me to confront another uncomfortable truth. The version of myself I wanted to become wasn't going to appear magically. It wasn't hiding somewhere in the future, waiting for the perfect moment. It had to be built, decision by decision, habit by habit, day by day. And that process couldn't be outsourced. Nobody could do it for me. Nobody could think for me. Nobody could grow for me. Nobody could become me for me. The responsibility was mine, completely. At first, that felt overwhelming. Then it became empowering. Because if responsibility belongs to me, then so does possibility. And possibility changes everything. The moment you realize your future is still in your hands, excuses lose their power, blame loses its power, fear loses its power, because none of them can stop someone who has decided to move. And movement had finally begun. Not dramatic movement, not life-changing movement, small movement, consistent movement, the kind most people overlook, the kind that seems insignificant in the moment, yet changes everything over time, because life rarely transforms overnight. It transforms through accumulations, small actions, small improvements, small decisions, repeated long enough to create a different reality. That's when I understood something I had never fully appreciated before. Success isn't built in giant moments, it's built in ordinary ones. The ordinary decision to show up, the ordinary decision to continue, the ordinary decision to keep moving when motivation disappears. Most people underestimate these moments because they aren't exciting. But those moments determine everything, because extraordinary lives are built from ordinary actions, repeated consistently, nothing more, nothing less. And once I understood that, I stopped searching for a breakthrough. I started creating momentum. Momentum became my focus, not perfection, not certainty. Momentum, because momentum solves problems that motivation never can. Motivation comes and goes. Momentum stays. Momentum carries you through difficult days, through doubt, through fear, through setbacks, through the moments when quitting feels easier than continuing. And every meaningful goal eventually requires those moments. That's why waiting is so dangerous. Waiting creates no momentum. Waiting creates no progress. Waiting creates no growth. It simply creates another day of waiting, another week, another year, another life. I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want to wake up 10 years later and discover that my future had been traded for comfort. that my potential had been exchanged for certainty, that my dreams had been sacrificed to fear disguised as preparation. I wanted more than that, and for the first time, I understood what more actually meant. Not more money, not more status, not more recognition, more ownership, more responsibility, more courage, more willingness to step into uncertainty, because that is where every meaningful life begins. Not when conditions are perfect, not when confidence appears, not when fear disappears, when you decide that waiting has cost enough already. And the day I realized that, everything started changing. There comes a moment in every person's life when the excuses stop working, not because circumstances change, not because life becomes easier, because the truth becomes impossible to ignore. For me, that truth was simple. Nobody was coming, no perfect opportunity, no perfect mentor, no perfect moment, no future version of myself arriving to save the present one. Just me, and for the first time, that reality didn't feel depressing, it felt freeing, because if nobody was coming, then I could stop waiting. I could stop looking over my shoulder for permission, stop hoping someone else would make the difficult decisions, stop believing my life was on hold until something external happened. The waiting was over. And strangely enough, that was the beginning. Most people spend their lives searching for freedom, but they search in the wrong places. They search for freedom in money, in success, in recognition, in circumstances. Yet real freedom starts somewhere else. It starts the moment you take ownership, commit ownership, not of everything that happens to you, of everything you do next. That's the difference. You can't control every event. You can't control every challenge. You can't control every obstacle, but you can control your response. And your response eventually becomes your life. That realization changed everything, because suddenly the future no longer felt like something happening to me. It became something I was creating, one decision at a time, one action at a time, one day at a time. And that's when I discovered something most people never understand: action is addictive. Not because it's easy, because it reveals possibility. Every step forward exposes another path. Every risk teaches something valuable. Every challenge develops strength. The more I moved, the more capable I became. The more capable I became, the less I feared uncertainty, and the less I feared uncertainty, the larger my world became. That's how growth works, not through giant breakthroughs, through accumulated courage. Tiny acts of courage repeated consistently. Most people underestimate the power of small actions. They want dramatic transformation. Life offers gradual transformation. They want one decision that changes everything. Life offers thousands of small decisions that slowly change everything. The difference seems insignificant until years pass. Then the difference becomes enormous, because every day you either build your future or postpone it. Every day you either move closer or stay where you are. There is no neutral. There is no standing still. Time keeps moving. Life keeps moving. The question is whether you're moving with it. I spent years believing I needed more confidence. Now I understand I needed more courage. Confidence comes after. Courage comes first. Confidence is seeing the mountain after you've climbed it. Courage is taking the first step when you can't see the top. And every meaningful achievement begins with courage. Not certainty, not comfort, not guarantees. Courage. The courage to start before you're ready. The courage to continue when progress is slow. The courage to trust yourself when nobody else understands your vision. That's what separates people who change their lives from people who spend years talking about change. One group acts, the other waits. And waiting has a cost most people never calculate. The cost isn't measured in money, it's measured in potential, in missed opportunities, in unrealized dreams, in the person you could have become. Every year spent waiting creates distance between who you are and who you're capable of becoming. That's why ownership matters so much. Ownership closes that distance. Ownership transforms hope into action. It transforms wishes into decisions. It transforms possibility into reality. And the moment I accepted that, something incredible happened. Fear lost its authority. Not completely. Fear never disappears. But it stopped making decisions for me. It stopped controlling my future. It stopped defining my limits. Because I finally understood something that had been true all along. Fear is not a stop sign. It's a direction. The things we fear most often point toward the growth we need most, the conversations we avoid, the risks we postpone, the opportunities we hesitate to pursue. Many of them exist on the other side of fear. Not all, but enough. Enough to make courage worth practicing. And courage is exactly that. A practice, not a personality trait, not something you're born with, something you build. One uncomfortable decision at a time. One difficult action at a time, one moment of honesty at a time. That's what I started doing. Not perfectly, not consistently at first, but deliberately, and little by little, my life began changing. Not because the world changed, because I changed. The opportunities had always been there. The possibilities had always been there. The difference was that I finally stepped toward them. I stopped waiting for permission, stopped waiting for confidence, stopped waiting for certainty, stopped waiting for rescue. And in doing so, I discovered something unexpected. The person I was waiting for my entire life was me, not a future version, not a stronger version, not a smarter version, the current version, the imperfect version, the uncertain version, the version that existed right now. Because that version was always enough to begin, maybe not enough to finish, but enough to start. And starting changes everything. People think transformation happens when you reach the destination. It doesn't. Transformation happens the moment you commit to the journey, the moment you stop negotiating with your excuses, the moment you stop asking life for guarantees, the moment you decide that fear will no longer determine your future. That's where the real change begins. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't waiting for opportunity. I wasn't waiting for knowledge. I wasn't waiting for confidence. I was waiting for certainty, and certainty never came, because certainty was never required. The people who build extraordinary lives aren't the people who know exactly what will happen. They're the people who move despite not knowing. They trust themselves enough to take the next step, then the next, then the next, until one day they look back and realize how far they've come. Not because they had special advantages, because they stopped waiting. And maybe that's the lesson hidden inside all of this. Your life is not waiting for permission. Your future is not waiting for confidence. Your potential is not waiting for certainty. Only you are waiting. And the moment you stop, everything changes. Because one day you'll wake up and realize that nobody was ever coming to save you. And surprisingly, that will be the best day of your life. Because that's the day you stop waiting for a hero and become one. The day you stop searching for rescue and become your own rescue. The day you stop hoping for a different future and start building it. The day you finally understand that the power you were searching for was never somewhere out there. It was always inside you, waiting. Not for permission, not for certainty, not for the perfect moment. Waiting for one decision, the decision to begin. And once you make that decision, there is no limit to who you can become.